Good afternoon. My name is Doug DiVirgilio. I'm a SCORE mentor and a member of the Minnesota Education Committee. We will be presenting today How Writing a Book Can Boost Your Business by Meghan Stevenson. And before we introduce Meghan and have her take it away, let me just talk a little bit about SCORE. So SCORE is a nationwide not-for-profit organization that is an independent resource partner of the U.S. Business Administration. SCORE provides America's small business with free confidential business mentoring, both in person and online, through many venues, 24/7. We have 300 chapters nationally and 10,000 volunteers. Now, here in Sarasota, Manatee County, we have 90 very talented, diverse mentors available to help you if you don't have a mentor, and from a wide variety of backgrounds. So I encourage you to go ahead and sign up for a mentor if you don't have one. And we're going to explain how we can help you in a minute. Our chapter has recently been recognized as District Chapter of the Year, and it's worth noting since its founding in 1964, SCORE has assisted over 11 million clients and small businesses throughout the U.S. Now, how can we help you? We can help you in the pre-startup phase. You're thinking about starting your dream business, and you want to know how to do that. There's a lot to it, both research time, study, industry, competitors. We can help with that. In your startup phase, again, another challenging phase to get going. Are you going to be successful? How are you going to manage that? If you're in business and you're in the growth phase, growing can be a challenge. Getting growth is what you want, but growing can also be a challenge. And if you're selling or closing or even buying a business, we can assist you with that as well. Now, how can when you reach a mentor? I would encourage you to visit score.org/Minnesota to request a mentor. You can see the profiles of our mentors. You can see a list of upcoming workshops. There are podcasts. There's tons of resources available for you there. Also, our recorded webinars if you want to review one of those. Finally, we need to thank our community partners, without which we would not be able to offer you all the services that we do. So here they are. I want to thank each and every one of them. And with that, I am going to turn over the webinar to Meghan. Thanks for joining us, Meghan.
So Penguin Random House is number 1. Simon & Schuster is number 2. HarperCollins is number 3, and Hachette is number 4. Macmillan is a close number 5. So we work on exclusively how-to self-help books. So we don't do any fiction, any memoir, any children's books. However, if you are working on those books to boost your business, I'll do my best to help you. I just don't always know about those categories because just like entrepreneurs, people in publishing very much specialize. So in 2020, I hit growth mode with my business and really narrowed my focus to just book proposals and manuscripts with self-help entrepreneurs, experts, and thought leaders. And since then, nearly half of our clients who landed a book deal received over $250,000 for their book, which is pretty extraordinary. I actually looked up the stat to help y'all give some context because I'm guessing y'all aren't traditional publishing experts. So less than 5% of authors achieve that level of investment for their book. So it's pretty extraordinary. We have some pretty heavy hitters on our client list, and I think that really shows our expertise and why we're one of the best people in this area to help you with your book. So the success I've been able to help my clients achieve stems from 3 things. Number 1, like you all, I have a big passion for books. I have a big passion for entrepreneurship. I love business. I love talking business. I love talking about the publishing industry. I like combining those 2 things. I have a ton of experience. I have almost 20 years of experience in traditional publishing. It's been my entire career, only industry I've ever worked in. I've also been an entrepreneur for 10 years. I launched my business in 2012 when I sort of hit my ceiling at Penguin Random House. And so that, I've just been in business for a long time, and I've made a lot of mistakes and had a lot of triumphs. I also really think my success is due to the integrity my team and I bring to the process. We have a policy of not working with anybody that we can't get results for, and that's really made a huge difference. We have to be highly selective of who we work with and what we do, because everything we do is intimate, individualized, and extremely high touch. I like to compare myself to like when I go buy things, like I'm a golfer. I've golfed in Florida. amazing golf courses y'all have. And when I went to buy my new clubs, I always compare them to models of cars. And so I bought their Mercedes of golf clubs, but I think of us as the Lexus, right? We're not a Rolls Royce, but we have a great experience. And so it's really, really nice to work with us. So I'm also really intentional about making publishing more inclusive. And so I purposely seek out diverse, underrepresented, and marginalized voices and audiences. So let's talk about what you're here for. So in the next hour, you're going to learn three things. First of all, the three most common ways that entrepreneurs become authors. The number one misconception I hear about book publishing from entrepreneurs, and why traditional publishing is the best way to boost your business with a book, right? And then I'm going to answer questions. And as I told you before, Danica is here to capture the questions you asked during the presentation so that we can make sure everyone's question is answered. So before we get started, I want to light up the chat a little bit, and I want to get to know y'all and who I'm talking to. So I know Rick already mentioned that he has self-published books. So if you have self-published a book, can you put the word author in the chat? Now make sure you use choose chat, not Q&A. But if you've self-published already, can you put author in the chat? I just want to see how many people have done that. I'm gonna have a little drink of my coffee here because it is 9:10 a.m. here in Seattle. Okay, so quite a few people. All right. There's always a lag with the chat. Just a little awkward, so but fun. Okay. I have only self-published journals. Okay, yes. I've actually just saw, I went to a conference where the self-publisher Lulu was a sponsor, and they talked about low content books like journals, which I think is really interesting. Okay, great. So for those of you who did publish, I would love to hear how you published. So you can put self in the chat if you self-published. You can put hybrid in the chat if you know what a hybrid publisher is. And then if you did get a traditional deal, I would love to hear that as well, and put traditional or trad in the chat. And for those of you, I don't want to leave anybody out. So I'm assuming the rest of you want to write or publish a book. And so if that's you, if you can put me in the chat, that would be really great too, because then I know sort of the balance of the folks that. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Usually I love seeing the chat light up with me. Okay. Wonderful. That's so great. Okay. So we're actually going to talk about, Rick, why self-publishing, the credibility piece is really interesting. So let's talk about the three most common ways that entrepreneurs become authors. All right. So I kind of previewed this a little bit, but I'm going to talk about it more in depth. So let's start with, there are three main pieces. I want to make sure I'm following my own slides. So there's self-publishing, there's hybrid publishing, and there's traditional publishing. And I'm going to explain the difference. But you can definitely think of these as three steps on a ladder almost. So let's start with self-publishing. So the major pro to self-publishing is that there's like absolutely no barrier to entry, right? There's very low barrier to entry. If you have a computer, you can self-publish. Also a big thing that you might have seen in Facebook ads or on self-publishing sites or in the self-publishing school or any of these other places is that you as the author get to retain all profits and rights, right? You get to do whatever you want with your book. A lot of people want that creative control. A big con to self-publishing is that people really underestimate how much work it is to write and especially to promote and market and sell a book. And so they don't really understand that they need to do everything themselves. And that's sales, that's promotion, that's marketing. They also don't understand in the broad scheme of things that having a self-published book that does not perform well, and by my measure, that's selling less than 5,000 copies, can actually undercut or even eliminate a traditional deal later on. It can kind of kill your career as an author if you want a traditional deal later on, right? And that's a big if. And then the biggest thing for me in self-publishing, that's a big downside, is that there's very limited distribution. For the most part, independent bookstores, airports, libraries, unless they're local to you, won't take your book unless it's like a huge self-published success, right? And there are those, every now and again, but they tend 99% of self-published books sell less than 500 copies. So that's the bad thing. I believe these are best for memoir, for niche markets and expertise. Odd formats is a big one. So the book I have right here, it's Can I Retire Yet? It's a very good book. I love this book. It's by my client, Darrow. Darrow is a blogger in the FIRE community. So FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And he wrote a book about retiring at 50, which is what he did. It was very much a short book. So on average, books are anywhere from 50 to 75,000 words. This book's about 35,000 words. So it's short. It's also super niche, and it was really dedicated to the military community or people that had pensions, which is a small segment of the general population. And so this worked really well for him. He sold like 15,000 copies of this. He wrote like 3 follow-up books. It did really, really well. But Darrow actually took a ton of time to hire a team around him, other than his cover, which is not the best cover I've ever seen. But like everything else was done at an exceptional level. So he had exceptional results, which is really great, but it can be a great option. So the next option is hybrid publishing. So I tell people to think of this as a middle ground, and it is also sort of a pay to play model. So in hybrid publishing, the pro to it is that you get professional quality and you still don't have those barriers to entry. You still don't have the gatekeepers of traditional publishing. The con can be that I have heard crazy expensive quotes for hybrid publishing with not like what I would consider a full stack delivery. So, 40K for the editorial, 100K for like everything. Packages that didn't quite live up to expectation or the sales call, all these sorts of things. Your results may vary. So it can be expensive. It still has that limited distribution. So still no independent bookstores, still no airports, still no libraries, unless it's like local, still no Barnes and Noble if that's important to you. And you're still responsible for the marketing and the promotion and sales. Hybrid publishing can be really good for people who have, frankly, money, right? People that are independently wealthy, people that don't want a traditional deal. They don't want to be on a traditional publisher's timeline, which tends to be longer. They don't, they're okay with project managing. They're okay with hiring. They're okay with paying to play, basically. Choose FI is a great example of this. This is an amazing book. If you're interested in FIRE at all, or just financial independence at all, I think this is a great book to get started with it. So I edited this book. It's wonderful. And the Choose FI brand is pretty significant. It's one of the heavy hitters in the FIRE community. And they just sort of had an indie streak. They're just independent, sort of counterintuitive guys. And so they don't do anything like the normal way. And so they wanted to do their own book. This book, if you picked it up, you would not think it was any different than any other book on the shelf. It would definitely fit into a Barnes and Noble, and you wouldn't even think it didn't come from a traditional publisher, which is something that hybrid offers. And for business people, there are several great hybrid upstarts, including Forbes books, that do a great job, that are staffed by former traditional publishing insiders. So you can get a lot of quality from that. I also think it's really important as well to just really consider like whether you want a traditional deal or not. Because a lot of people think hybrid is the way to go because it's the only way to go, which isn't true. With hybrid too, you're dealing with independent companies. So one of the biggest hybrid publishers literally just collapsed 2 weeks ago. Let go of all of their employees, no severance. They left their freelancers hanging. Like, you kind of don't know who you're dealing with when you come to these companies, because they are essentially startups, right? And so they really vary in quality. And so that's just something to watch out for. So the next is traditional publishing. So traditional publishing, and I'm biased, I will say I'm biased on this 100%. Traditional publishing is not perfect at all. The pro is that you get paid. You get an advance on earnings. So that is, what you get paid for your book deal is the advance on earnings. So that's the money that is meant for you to write the book, hire someone like me, collaborator, ghostwriter, hire, someone to help you run your business so you have time to write the book, things like that. Also invest in promotion, marketing, all of that. You also get professional help. The people that will work on your book work it for a publisher. They work for Penguin Random House. They work for Simon & Schuster. So you get that professional level of help with editing, the production of the book, the cover. You get massive distribution. So publishers are great at distributing books. And so they will distribute it into independent bookstores. They have entire sales forces for that, regional, local salespeople. They have, each of the major publishers has one person to talk to BNN in every category. It's pretty amazing. And you tend to sell more because the publisher, a traditional publisher, expects to sell at least 10,000, if not more, like 20,000 copies of every book they buy. And so that's the expectation, right? And that is part of the con. There is a very high barrier to entry. You're still also responsible for promotion and marketing for reasons I'm going to get into later. And you often have to build a substantial audience first, because that's what they're looking to leverage on the publisher side, is they're looking to leverage your audience. So this is really best for entrepreneurs with large audiences. The people that I work with reach at minimum 50,000 people up to 100,000 people in a year with their message, with their facilitation, with their businesses. It's wonderful if you do a lot of speaking, because something that the publishers excel at, and there's an entire department for it, is shipping boxes of books to events, right? So if you're on the circuit, I have a client who is an inspirational speaker with Deloitte, and that is a circuit to get on, y'all, because it's just like once you get in there, you just you're booking as many speaking engagements as you can handle, and the books can arrive, and you can sell a lot of books that way. It's great for everyone who wants to be the go-to expert in their niche, because that's a good way to do it. Also important if you want to expand into press, film, and TV. And if you want to be a New York Times bestseller, this is probably the best way to go about it, so that you can actually, call yourself a bestseller, whether that hits the New York Times list, the Wall Street Journal list, or the USA Today list. So these are 3 books that I've worked on in my career. How to Love Teaching Again came out in April. Last time I checked with the author, it sold 10,000 copies since April. Jamie Sears is amazing. If you know a teacher, I highly, highly recommend you buy them this book. It's amazing, especially for K-5 teachers. The Kick-Ass Single Mom is by blogger Emma Johnson. So she was a single mom. Her husband had a brain injury, actually, that changed his personality, that affected their marriage. And so she became a single mom, and she just thought the narrative around single motherhood was bullshit. And so she decided to be a kick-ass single mom and help other women do that. And then Trust Yourself is a great book. If you feel like you overthink, if you get caught in achiever syndrome, if you, like me, describe yourself as a recovering overachiever, this is a fantastic book. Melody Wilding is a professional coach, does a lot of speaking, teaches, and this is her book. So I wrote the proposals for all these books, and I also helped Jamie with her manuscript. Now, I want to be really clear that even though I'm biased towards traditional publishing, I do not judge on what people want to do, because everybody's going to be different. There's no one right way for anybody to do anything. So it's up to you to explore. I just am really passionate about educating people about the options, because usually people come at this with a very a message or a sales pitch, right? The self-publisher is going to tell you to self-publish. The hybrid publisher is going to tell you they're the best. Traditional publishers just sort of stay mum because they have a problem of like too much volume coming in, and they hide under hiding holes. And so I'm out here just giving you my slightly biased but open and non-judgmental opinion about what your options are. I also kind of stayed down on self-publishing and hybrid publishing. So if you have questions about those, I may be able to answer them, but I might not. Mostly because I'm really, really focused on traditional publishing. That's the only thing we help our clients with. And so I still think it's the best option for most entrepreneurs, especially those that have a how-to book idea and want to make a really big impact. So that's going to be the perspective of which I deliver the rest of the advice in this presentation. So just FYI. Although, some of the rules do apply to self and hybrid publishing as well. So let's move on to the number one misconception about writing a book that I see entrepreneurs and experts make, and I've actually already seen this in the chat. So when I saw that, I kind of thought, oh, I hope I don't offend somebody, but also yay. Okay, so this is what the misconception is. It's thinking that writing a book will build your audience and act like a lead generator. And usually I have a show and tell book. I usually have Jamie's book, and so I'm going to grab it right here. I forgot about this part of the presentation. So yay, I got the one thing I messed up out of the way, only 24 minutes in. So that's awesome. Okay, so this is Jamie's book. So we're going to play a little show and tell here in the chat. So here's my question, and it's a really simple question. Does this book talk? And I'm going to keep asking questions. So does this book talk? You can answer in the chat, yes or no. Does this book talk? Does this book promote itself? Can this book share its best parts on social media? Can it go on Instagram and post? Can this book write a review? Okay, so I'm going to disagree respectfully with Carol because it can't. This book doesn't do anything. It's paper, it's ink, and it's glue right here, right? That's it. And this book has a lot of power because it can change lives. It can inspire, it can do a lot of great things in the world. But as a promotional tool to generate audience, to generate attention on its own, it kind of sucks because you have to buy it and read it in order for it to work. So the reason that this is the biggest misconception I hear is it makes a really big assumption. The big assumption is that once you write a book, you're golden, right? The book will do everything for you. And this is basically sort of like a get rich quick scheme in disguise, because a book cannot and will not build your audience and sell your services for you. Now, it can definitely help. It can definitely, do big things, but it's not going to create an Instagram account with 100,000 followers. It's just not. Okay. So for any book to succeed, the editorial content, so what's inside the book, has to be awesome. And in my world of self-help, it has to be useful, practical, and effective, right? And this is a big and, the author has to have a way to promote and sell it to a distinct audience. So this is why a lot of self-published authors end up disappointed, or worse, end up with cartons of books in their garage or in their trunk of their car, right? Because you can have a great idea that's really important, that needs to be heard, and that creates really good results. But if no one knows about it, you're kind of screwed. You need to be able to sell your book in order to make an impact with the words inside of it. So what I see a lot is people that are really focused, and it's so easy and so tempting to do this, to focus on writing the book, because for a lot of us, that's easier than putting ourselves out there, right? That's easier than marketing. That's easier than posting on Instagram. That's easier than writing emails. It's easier than any of these like kind of lead generation marketing activities that we do. It's easier actually to dream about how your book will be received than to take those actions because of criticism, right? Because of fear, because of like, what if absolutely nobody comes to your live presentation, right? Like I thought that today, I was like, oh, are 5 people going to be here or 100 people going to be here? I don't know, but I guess I'm showing up the same, right? So like, that's like a big fear that I see, is that fear of visibility and that fear of what's happening. In some ways, like in parallels to our businesses more generally, right? Like how many of us know somebody who talks a lot about creating their own business, but never does anything? It's kind of the same thing. So what I've seen over and over again is that when authors avoid sharing their thought leadership or their ideas outside of their book, then the book itself isn't likely to be read. And it's really true no matter how you publish it, right? That's where one of those things that cuts across all different avenues of publishing. So the smarter move instead, and I've seen this play out with authors in the last 12 years that I've been in my own business helping authors, is to play the long game. So Jamie was able to sell thousands of copies because she built her audience, she generated leads and created a system to bring in more people to her world than way before she even started writing a book, right? On average, most of the clients that I work with on their books have been in business anywhere from 5 to 10 years already. And so that might seem really counterintuitive if you've been thinking or focused on actually writing your book first, right? But the thing is, when you take time to share your ideas and build a substantial audience first, you actually get to test your ideas and make sure that what you think is going to matter to people actually does. And that's what ultimately makes your book way more successful. So you're here because you want to boost your business with a book. And, I'm sort of telling you that focusing on building your business foundation first is what will actually make writing, publishing, and promoting a book worth the time and effort. So I'm going to break this down a little bit so that you understand where I'm coming from, because I don't want to, I don't want you all to feel like I'm delivering a bunch of haterade, especially to those of you that I've published before. So I'm going to break this down into two separate pieces. So why you need consistent lead generation and why you need to build a large audience for your book to succeed and help the people that you want to help. So the first thing is consistent lead generation. So as entrepreneurs, we need a way to generate business, right? We need a way to attract new clients. But a lot of the people I meet have a low volume of clients. And I'm going to put myself in that group as well. We work with 12 clients one-on-one at any given time. And in our membership, we have usually anywhere between 15 and 20. And maybe some people work with me one-on-one in VIP days. So like maybe all included, we maybe have 25 to 30 clients at any given time, and that's small compared to some of the entrepreneurs I work with. So many people, including me, only have high-priced one-to-one offers, or they work with corporate clients, right? Often white labeling their services, or in ways that, like, I have a prospective client whose biggest client was Google, but Google didn't want her to say that she was working at Google as a consultant, so her hands are sort of tied in that way. And what happens is that those folks don't have a leveraged offer that can attract and help hundreds or thousands of folks, right? They don't have a one-to-many offer or a scalable offer. So these entrepreneurs also tend to operate on referral. And while that can very much support a business, it doesn't have the marketing or the top of funnel that you need in order to sell a book. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more. So a lot of people don't do an active marketing. Again, I'm going to put myself in these shoes and say that I did no active marketing for my business for 8 years. And I did okay. I wasn't saying I was doing fine, but I did okay, on the referral only. And so that means the majority of people I meet, like out on the street at events like this, have no established way of bringing leads in, no established sales funnel, no established way of step-by-step bringing people in from, the greater world to being clients, right? So I also wanted to say that you don't need any of this, like any of this scalability, any of these offers that help thousands of people. You don't need to market yourself endlessly. You don't need entire funnels or ads or social media to support yourself or have a thriving business, right? A lot of the people I meet, they're running 5, 6, 7-figure businesses with zero marketing, all just based on one-to-one work. It's totally possible. However, you do need those things. You do need that scalable offer. You do need those, that huge follower base. You do need that established, lead generation funnel to have a successful book. Because when you don't have a way to consistently attract leads and sell them your services or products, you also don't have a way to sell your book. So I'd like to do another little experiment here. So what I'd love to see in the chat is if you could sell a book to every client you've ever worked with, so ever, over the course of your business, how many books would you sell? Like, how many books would you sell? Put that number in the chat. I'm just very, very curious about this. So in terms of like, how many books would you sell if you had sold every single like client ever, right? For us, I think it's around 100. So that, let's see, what is that number? I'm very, very curious. 100 plus. Alan's got 2,000. That's great, Alan. It's really nice. I love these numbers and they're so fascinating. Stephanie says 2K. I kind of secretly build these questions in so I can drink my coffee. Sheena says 20. These answers, I want to just validate that they're so normal. And I talk to people a lot, and like, these are the numbers I tend to see. Naisha, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It says 50. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that number leads us to the second part of what makes a book successful, which is building a large audience. So not everybody wants to be internet famous. Not everybody wants to be T Swift, right? Not everybody wants an audience of 1 million people, right? I totally understand that. But what I've seen over and over again is that only about 5% of your audience will buy your book. So let's take that number that you just computed and divide that number by 20. So Sheena is a great example. Sheena has 20 clients. If we were to take 5% of Sheena's clients, that's literally one person, right? For me, I have about 100 clients in my repertoire. If only 5% bought, that would be 20 books sold. The biggest number we saw here was 2,000. We take 5% of that, and we're really looking at, about 40. And so when you see that, right, you understand what the publisher's looking at in terms of your audience and in terms of your sales potential. And if that number is really small, you're not alone at all. Like, this is by and large what I tend to see from folks. So for traditional publishing, the expectation, like I said before, is to sell 20,000 books in the first year. Totally possible if you have an audience of 1 million people or more. So if that's super far away from where you are now, I totally get that. I started doing marketing 3 years ago. I have invested a lot of money into it, and I still only really have an audience of 10,000 people. Okay. So luckily, there are so many upsides to growing your audience outside of creating a successful book. So when I have people that come to me and they say, I want a book, I'll build an audience for my book, I was like, do you want something else? Right? Like, do you want something else? Do you want a bigger business? Do you want financial freedom? Do you want, to be in Business Insider? Do you want to hire a bunch of teams so you don't have to do client work anymore? Do you want these other things, right? Because the book itself is not enough to pull you forward in this dream, okay? So luckily, there's so many upsides, right, to growing your audience outside of creating a successful book. And I just mentioned a couple of them. And to me, the potential downsides. So big one, stepping out of your comfort zone, maybe hiring folks to help scaling your business, spending maybe some of your revenue on ads, like those are well worth the benefits to me. But this, again, like the publishing, is your decision. So I could tell you dozens of things that change when you decide to grow an audience. But the big pieces that I see, and I see this over and over again with our Author Platform Builders membership, is that when you grow your audience, your business will get more attention, more leads, more clients, more revenue, and more success. Danica, can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So yeah, I think that was the next slide. Next slide. Yes. Okay, so perfect. So it really depends on how you define success, right? Not everybody defines success by like a New York Times bestselling book and a $10 million business, but some people do, right? So another huge benefit that doesn't fit on this slide is that your advice becomes more effective because you put it in front of more people. So when you have to explain the same thing over and over again, new perspectives sort of naturally pop up. If you were here early on, you might have heard me say that this speech is brand new. This speech is entirely different than what I would have presented to you back in 2020. And I have to say that despite sometimes really getting tired of saying the same thing over and over again, the work I've done in this area has been so worth it. So let's talk about why publishers want you to have that big audience. It's because they want to leverage your audience to sell books. That's what they're doing. Publishers are operating businesses too, right? They're not non-for-profits. So the traditional publishers we work with, the big five, right? Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, Macmillan, Hachette, they're all international corporations. They have huge staffs. When I worked at Simon & Schuster, there were 500 of us, and that was just in the US. They publish thousands of books every year, right? Thousands of books. What they are looking for when editors are on the prowl for a new project is authors with great ideas and audiences that they can leverage, because readers finding their books is the hardest part of their business. Okay, so selling their books is the hardest part. The distributing is, they kind of got that on lock, right? But in order for that book to be sold, they really need an author out there championing it. And why this matters to you as an author is because you can leverage that as well. So you have power in this situation. That's actually something that I see a lot of authors, more on the fiction side than the nonfiction side, but I still see it on the nonfiction side as well. It's like this, like, please, please publish me attitude, versus the people who have millions of followers being like, oh yeah, you know, you're going to publish me, and here's why, right? So we want that second attitude, not the first, because you have the leverage when you have both the idea and the audience. When you're bringing both of those things to the business party, you can partner with the publisher more on equal footing and make money. So you're going to make money in addition to the advance. This is also something that's a misconception, right? The advance is not the only money you're going to make off your book. The advance is intended to help you cover the cost of writing the book and hiring somebody like me, and maybe investing in something like a PR strategy or a new website or a book team, or, you know, sending 1,000 books to influencers, things like that. But you also have the opportunity to earn royalties when your book is profitable. So when, you know, the publisher's investment, both in your advance and what it costs them to produce the book, gets paid off, y'all get to profit share, right? But entrepreneurs have an even bigger upside than that. And that gets us to the third thing that we're going to learn today, which is why traditional publishing is the best way to boost your business with a book. So I'm going to share a detail with you that might surprise you. I intend for my clients and authors to break even on writing their book. Yep, I said it. So if you were listening carefully, you might remember that the majority of my clients get six-figure deals, which means that I charge six figures for our services, which I do. The reason for that is twofold. Number one, I'm really, really good at what I do. Some have said I'm the best. I hesitate to say I'm the best. I would say I'm one of the best. I am, again, Alexis, right? So that's really important. I also feel really passionate that me and my team get paid a fair wage for what we do, that we can live on it, that we can thrive on it. And second, I've seen over and over again that my clients get a return on investment despite paying more upfront. So I'm going to use this case study, and I'm going to disguise this person because she's super, super well known. I'm going to call her Amber, and she's a very successful business coach. So when I met her, Amber was charging clients $25,000 to work with her in a small group setting. Amber had already developed a really large audience, about 50,000 people. She had already developed intellectual property through sharing her message. And she had set up a system that brought in new leads and turned those leads into clients. So I call this a lead funnel. And you're going to see this nice little handy dandy illustration here. So, and it might be small for you guys because we're in the webinar setting, or maybe it's bigger than my little thing. So keep in mind, when I met Amber, she had everything on the slide. Okay, so she had, you know, her system of like ads that led to freebies, which led to her mid-priced offer, which led to her high-priced offer. Okay, and at the time, the only way to work with her was through these group programs, and her mid-priced offer was on the high end of that range, so it was at least several $1,000s, right? Her high-priced offer was, again, like 25K. So knowing that, I made sure to include in the pitch to the publisher that her fans were constantly asking for an affordable way to work with her. They really wanted to know, hey, how can I work with her for less money? Because I can't afford, you know, $1,000. I can't afford $10,000. And when it came time for her book to be published, she put this funnel back into action. She reinvested in it, growing her audience for months beforehand and promoting bonuses and even entire online course if people bought her book. So Amber ended up selling like wildfire. That book hit the Wall Street Journal list. She sold thousands of copies. She netted thousands of dollars in royalties, but more importantly, she was able to grow her business substantially. She took it from 1 million to at least 10 million. Last time I talked to her, she was at 10 or $15 million in revenue. And today she charges 4 times as much to be able to work with her in a small group setting, up to $100,000 per client. It's kind of bonkers. So Amber has earned way more royalty or way more money from her book than what the publisher has paid her, both in advance and royalties. That's because her traditional book deal set her up for success, both with her business model and the publishers, right? So everybody got to win. And she was able to capitalize on what she had already built and leverage what the traditional publishers brought to the table that self and hybrid publishers simply can't, which is the distribution. So if your dream or a large part of your business is speaking, this is fucking great news, right? Sorry to drop the F-bomb, but this is great news. A traditional book publisher has an entire department of people dedicated to getting your books to every speaking engagement you have on time, right? Pretty awesome. And if you're passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, like I am, and you want your book to be in the stacks at libraries across the country, only a traditional book publisher has the power to do that because they have the relationships with hundreds and thousands of hardworking librarians all across the country. And if you want your book in an airport, also traditional publishing. You want to be in Oprah's book club. You want to be in Reese's book club. You want to be on Good Morning America and Jenna's book club or on the Today Show. Have your own Netflix special someday, like Ramit Sethi or Brene Brown. Guess what? That's all traditional publishing too. So I'm going to say this all with the caveat that traditional publishing isn't perfect. There are way more gatekeepers in traditional publishing than anywhere else. There are a lot of hurdles to landing a book deal, way more than hitting send on a file that you'll upload to Amazon. It's a much higher bar to entry. But as someone who has worked on behalf of authors for 2 decades, I can say without a doubt that traditional publishing is still the best route for entrepreneurs and experts who want to be taken seriously and make an impact on thousands of people. So I've seen a traditional book deal transform the lives and businesses of my clients and would love for you to have that happen to you as well. So you might be wondering, how do I get a book deal then? And I'm about to tell you. So this is a little bonus because I put together this speech and it's supposed to end here, but I was like, I can't not tell them this. So how to get a traditional book deal? There are 3 things you need to get a traditional book deal. I call them the 3 Ps: potential, platform, and proposal. So let's talk about potential. So in 2022, my team and I chatted with over 200 entrepreneurs and experts who wanted to get a book deal, but only 30 of those became clients. And that's because I know as a publishing professional, not everyone has the potential to get a 6-figure book deal. And the reason I say potential is because nothing is guaranteed. 85% of our clients who finish a proposal with us get a 6-figure book deal. That's compared to about 1% overall. I usually hear 2 reactions to this. The first is like, holy shit, how do I get that 85%? And a close second is, what's up with that 15% that fail, right? And my answer is that the publishing industry is incredibly subjective, and like life in general, there are no guarantees. However, as an author, you do have control, which takes us to the next part of the equation, which is an author platform. So what the heck is an author platform? The easy definition is an audience, but it's more complicated than that. So your author platform is what sells books. So it's unique to each author. What you have going on is different than every other person on this Zoom, okay? So platform is another subjective thing. You'll notice this is a super pattern, right? There aren't specific benchmarks to hit or even a certain amount of followers you need to achieve in order to get a book deal. In fact, sometimes you don't even need to be on social media, which is like blasphemy in certain realms, right? So I tend to see 3 different types of author platforms with my clients. So the first, which is most common, is what I call an entrepreneurial author. Tanika, can we move to the next slide, please? Someone, or actually 2 different types. I used to have a third, and then I realized it was really, really close to these other 2. So this is someone whose author platform is strongest in the areas that make online entrepreneurs successful. The second type is an expert author who tends to be a subject matter expert or an academic. So you'll see that where these people differ. So you've got email lists for both of them, but like the expert author might not have one. Both tend to have social media. The entrepreneurial author might not need to have press. or might not have very much press, or it might be really local. The entrepreneurial author almost always has free content. Expert author may not. Entrepreneurial author always has a sale funnel because they're always selling something. They usually have a one-to-many offer. They usually have a model that's constantly selling every day. Most of them usually have a network. Most of them might do speaking, and expert authors tend to do education and corporate buys as well, where entrepreneurial authors do not. So I like to think of this list not as a to-do list, but as a preview menu. So you can choose what you want to have and you can leave the rest. That said, you usually have to mix up places and platforms where you interact with your audience and your potential readers. So what's awesome for us as entrepreneurs is that the same actions that make our businesses successful is what sells books, and that could be called an author platform. So I'm going to walk through 2 different clients that worked with me to get their book deal. So how these clients market and operate their businesses is different, and what made their authors platforms different too, right? So Dr. Katrina Ubal, she runs a company called Weight Loss for Busy Physicians. She helps other women doctors, former pediatrician, lose weight through life coaching and a very healthy eating model. So Katrina has an email list. She has a ton of free content. She definitely has a sales funnel where she works people from like barely knowing her all the way to being clients. She has one-to-many offers with small group coaching. She's selling that coaching almost every day, and she knows a lot of other people. She doesn't do a ton of speaking. She has 0 education and corporate buys. Her social media is really modest, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And her only press is around Milwaukee, where she lives. So next up is Ray McDaniel. So Ray, in contrast, is an expert. They're a subject matter expert. They wrote a book about transitioning your gender with ease. Ray has an email list. Ray's social media is also pretty modest. They do a lot of press and media. They've been in all sorts of things, Bustle, New York Times, BuzzFeed, all over. They have a one-to-many offer because they run a therapy practice in Chicago where other therapists deliver therapy. So they're not doing all the client work. They have a network. They're really well known in their niche as a sex therapist and a gender therapist working with the LGBTQIA community. They do a ton of speaking, like they're everywhere. They do DEI speaking, they do corporate speaking, they do colleges, at a college, they can talk to the faculty, the LGBTQI group and student groups and orientation groups, all sorts of things. And then the education and corporate buy, they also do that, right? So like if they do a presentation on DEI, the corporation is going to buy their book, which is really great. And this is a fantastic book in case you know anyone who is navigating their gender. So I want to point out there's no right or wrong here, just like there's no right or wrong to choosing what you want to eat on a preview menu, right? Katrina and Ray had the same goal of landing a book deal, and ultimately they both achieved that goal by building their own way to market themselves and build an audience of would-be book buyers. So now that you know the basics of an author platform, we can revisit those 3 Ps. So the last part of your book deal is proposal. So I want to touch on why we write book proposals in the first place. So prescriptive how-to nonfiction is a bit unusual in how it's presented within the publishing industry. So with other genres like fiction and memoir, the writing is what really matters. However, in how-to, the author's platform is just as important as the editorial content. So these 3 pieces, potential platform proposal, are almost equal, I would say. So it can be helpful to think of your book as a product and your book deal as a partnership between you and the publisher. So in this perspective, in this viewpoint, book proposal is a business case for why the publisher should partner up with you on creating, promoting, and selling a product. So let's talk about why the publishing industry wants to see proposals in the first place. So the first people we take our proposals to is a literary agent. So they're basically your manager for your literary career. They work on commission. So they have to make a lot of bets. They're never sure, just like I am not ever sure anything's ever going to sell. And they look at clients the same way I do. Like they think, can this sell? Do I think this is reasonable? Yes. Okay, great. I'm going to represent this person. They turn around and give that proposal to an editor at a major publishing house. These editors get a minimum of 25 of these proposals a week. Okay, so they're in addition to everything else they do, they've got to read 25, anywhere from 15 to 100-page proposals. They need to make a determination super quickly on what they want to pursue, the books they love, what they want to spend their time on. And as editors advance in their careers, they actually have the books they've decided to champion plugged into a profit and loss statement. So if an editor starts to make too many losing bets, they're not likely to be promoted, and they might even lose their job as an editor. So it's really important that the books they pick work, just like it's important that the books an agent picks work, just like it's important that the books I pick work, right, and sell. And editors have to get buy-in from at least 5 to 10 other people, right? Their boss, publicity people, marketing people, salespeople. And so it's really important to have a great proposal. So let's pretend that you finished a book proposal, right? You've gone through all of this, either with me or someone else or on your own. And I want to explain this part of the process because it's really important for you to know where you're heading. So in my view, your book proposal is ready when you work with me, when you're happy with its content. And I feel super confident that you're going to get a literary agent and a book deal. So as a practice, I don't write or send out proposals that aren't ready to sell. And most often that comes down to your ability to sell the book to a large audience. So literary agents see my proposals, know they're ready, right? They know that I'm not going to send them something half-baked. I'm going to send them something that's worth their time. And that accounts a lot for that 85% success rate that I mentioned earlier. So another facet of my business personally is that I pair my clients specifically with literary agents that I think will work for them. So let's go back to that magical time when you have a great large audience, you have a great book idea, you've got a killer book proposal. So by that point, we've been working together for at least 6 months. Sometimes we've been working up to a year. And so, we know you really well. We're going to put you with a literary agent that fits with everything like that, like I said before, and they're going to submit the proposal to a publisher. And that's kind of how a book deal happens. And I could go way more into detail, but we're almost coming up on the top of the hour, and I want to make sure that we're going to hit everybody's Q&A. So the point is that a book deal is just the beginning of your journey to becoming a published author. If you're like most of the entrepreneurs I work with, you want to get your message to as many people as possible. And, that might be why you're here. That might be why you want to write a book in the first place, because you want your book to matter and you want it to last. You want that best-selling book because you want to feel proud of what you've been able to accomplish and do in the world, especially for the folks who need you. And I get that because I want that for you as well. So ultimately, I want every single person on this Zoom to believe what I do is that a traditional book deal and a 6-figure book deal is possible for you. So if you're like some of my clients, you might have heard that traditional publishers will steal your ideas, restrict your business, or take all your money, and none of that's true. In fact, it's completely the opposite. So a traditional book deal can help you promote and leverage your ideas, grow your business, and they'll pay you up front. That said, I'm going to say it again, hybrid and self-publishing can be great options. You are here because you want a book to boost your business. And so I want you to say, there's lots of ways to do that, right? I want you to make the best choice for you. So one of the reasons I actually host workshops like this and agree to do speaking is because I want authors to make an informed decision. So most of the people I meet, my mother included, actually have no idea how publishing works. And while I can't speak more to self-publishing because I don't work in it, I can tell you the truth about traditional publishing so you can make an informed decision on whether you want this book deal or not. So to recap, I'm just going to go over these 3 P's again for you real quickly. So potential is an idea that could become a best-selling book because the content still matters. You also need an author platform. So this is a large and engaged audience that's ready to buy your book. And because without that, you won't sell very many copies, and that's not financially viable. Basically for anybody, right? This is actually what fails everybody across all platforms, or all publishing methods, self, hybrid, or traditional, right? Luckily, this is entirely within your control, right? You can scale up your audience if you want to, and you can keep it small if you want to. You can just sort of do whatever you want. And then the proposal piece is how you get a book deal, because without a professionally written proposal, it's going to be really hard to get a literary agent or a publisher interested. Okay, great. So I've got a couple more rookie ideas, but I want to make sure that I get questions answered. I'm just like popping out here. Okay, so we only have a couple questions. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you those rookie mistakes too, because I really want to help you here. Okay, so rookie mistake number one, which is rushing to publish. So this is a big deal because authors are impatient. A lot of y'all want to get the book deal right now. So you forget that about the broader context, right? So the traditional book publishing process is long. It on average takes a couple years. I don't know where the slides went, but we'll figure it out. Okay, so on average, it takes about 2 to 3 years. And the biggest piece of that is usually growing your author platform. So I learned the hard way. This is absolutely essential. It transformed my business, honestly. And so it really took me from being a sole prop, making less than $100,000 a year, to being able to pay myself $100,000 a year. Yeah, Linda, I don't know what's going on with the screen share. Oh, here we go. We're coming back. Okay, here we are. We're back. Yay. Okay. So yeah, so that's what's really happening. And this is actually what I see from people as well, is that when they don't build their platform enough, this is what gets them, no's. The second mistake is not building an audience, which I sort of already talked about. So there's an idea out in the world that authors are artists, and as artists, we shouldn't have to promote or sell our work because it's crass or unnecessary or icky, but nothing could be further than the truth. So most people want to publish a book because they want to impact someone else's life in a positive way. So I'm going to look at this author entrepreneur timeline really quick because I got kind of thrown off by the not slides. So you'll see that the biggest thing is the platform building part, right? It's starting your business, getting the result, growing and scaling it, and getting, to this part where you would be able to work on a proposal, right? Because it's the biggest part, the 3 to 6 year part, is really the platform building part. So that's really, really important. So often I really hear like, I don't have time for that, or I'll do that later when it comes to building an audience, but that's really short-sighted because that 3 to 6 years, that's so variable because it depends on how fast people take action on it, right? It can delay the timeline. It can even prevent you from publishing a book because someone else can jump on that idea, right? Someone else can publish your book before you get around to it. And the last mistake, and if Tanika, if we could click forward, that'd be great. Because we are on mistake number 3. You have to be everywhere and get a bajillion million followers to get a book deal. So that's totally not true. Every single author I've worked with have chosen where to show up and spend their energy based on what they like and where their audience is, right? I mentioned earlier that Katrina and Ray both have small followings on social, to the point where actually finding an agent was the hardest part for both of them. But what publishers and agents really care about is that you have a defined audience that you can reach consistently. That's why I really encourage people, including yourselves, to focus on where you want to show up and where your ideal client and readers show up. That can be easy to say and hard to do, but there's a huge benefit to building your audience as an entrepreneur or expert, right? And we already talked about a lot of that stuff. Creating content, developing IP, and showing up daily online, whether that's in social or on an email list, is a great way to attract new clients, test new offers, and grow your business. So the last mistake we haven't really talked about as much, which is writing the whole book first. So this is what I see most often, and it's honestly the worst of these rookie mistakes. So I'm a writer, I'm pretty outgoing, but I'm also sort of a part-time hermit, surprises people sometimes. So I can totally understand how appealing it is to hidey hole away in your office or a local coffee shop and write a book everybody will love. But that's a flawed idea because it prevents you from getting visible, building an audience, and receiving the feedback you need to write an effective book that benefits readers. And as we discussed before, a full manuscript isn't even necessary for you to get a book deal. So deciding to write the whole book in order to get a book deal is counterintuitive and often kind of a waste of your time. So the last bonus that I'm going to give you today is assuming that traditional publishing is not for you. So this one's actually pretty simple to address because it's totally not the case. So a lot of people, particularly people of color and people from marginalized identities, assume that there's zero chance a big publisher will be interested in their books, right? Including many of my most successful authors. Actually, I find it a good sign when people are like, do you really think I'm going to get a deal? I was like, yes. It's the people that are like, I'm going to get a deal and it's going to be $1 million. I'm like, oh no, right? So I like that doubt. But really, a publisher is looking to leverage what you have built, your unique content, your unique audience, right? Like what you've got to offer. They want to partner with you because what the publisher is hoping for almost every time is the author selling a lot of books. So that's where your author platform comes in, right? When you've taken the time to build, develop, nurture a large engaged audience, you know what they struggle with, you know what they're trying to improve and what they really need. And that's really where you get to write an effective how-to book that creates a benefit. So it really doesn't matter what the benefit is, but the key is knowing your audience so that you can write a book that creates that benefit, right? And even better, gets them talking and bringing more people into the world, because the book does get to talk a little bit, to Carol's point, but only after you've established it in the market, right? That's when people get to promote it and evangelize it for you. So a great example of this in action is my client, Kyle Schwartz. Since 2017, she has sold more than 80,000 copies of her first book, I Wish My Teacher Knew. And that book still sells 20,000 or 200 copies a week. It started out as a post on Twitter that went viral, and she supports it through speaking engagements and podcasts, but really it's teachers handing it to other teachers. And that led to a second book for her. And although she's not like, internet famous or a household name, she's really well known as an advocate for children in education. And so that's really what made her book work. So I am almost done, y'all. And so what I want you to take away from this workshop ultimately is 3 things. It is possible for you to get a traditional book deal if you want one. If that's what you want, you need 3 things: potential, platform, and proposal. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to answer your questions, obviously. But Danica is also going to share a link in the chat to a free guide for you about writing an irresistible book proposal that sells. This guide offers even more advice than I talked about today, and I hope it'll be super valuable for you. So I'm going to switch to the questions in the chat. And I thank you so much for your time and your attention. All right, I'm going to go in here. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go in. I see a bunch of questions that say they're answered, but they clearly have not been. Okay, so Amber is the first one I see that I can answer. So Amber says, probability of success with self-publishing on places like Amazon versus using a company like yours / being selected by a large publisher. Amber, could you phrase that differently? I want to make sure I'm answering that question right. That would be really, really helpful. And also what you think success is would be probably helpful for that. So Cassie asked, what are the potential risks involved in publishing a book? I mean, the biggest one usually that my clients are afraid of is that they're going to have haters or that they're going to be criticized. And so that could be something. You can also lose money potentially. We have a client who got a really big advance, and I think it kind of messed with her head a little bit, and so she didn't promote her book, and so it didn't sell, and so now she won't be able to publish another book, right? Because like any investment you make, if you lose money on the first investment, you're not likely to invest with that person again. So those are the risks I would say that most people are concerned about. Cassie also asked, what is the relationship between number 1, the length of the book, number 2, cost of the book, and 3, whether or not there's a company workbook and the benefits to your business. So length of the book and cost of the book is determined by the publisher in the traditional publishing model. And usually it's just based on like a bigger book, a longer book, it's going to be more expensive. It also depends on format. So if you have a paperback book, it's going to be cheaper than hardcover. And the way they determine format is about the audience, right? So for Jamie's book, for example, it's for teachers. So it is $19 and it is 230 pages. And so that's, a pretty good deal. They weren't going to do it in hardcover because teachers are price sensitive. Okay. And the rest was just for Rick here. So let me see what the open ones are. So I hope that answers your question. What are my thoughts on Amazon? I have a lot of thoughts on Amazon. So Amazon's really interesting. If you're going to buy books, I encourage you to buy books from your local independent bookstore or bookshop.org. They're just way more friendly to independent booksellers and authors. Amazon is kind of not a great partner in terms of like businesses. So that's just really important on that side. Now, publishing through Amazon, I don't know a lot about it. I've had a lot of people be successful, and a lot of people feel like they got kind of screwed or didn't understand what they were getting into. So I think like a lot of different things when it comes to self or hybrid publishing, I would do your due diligence. Buyer beware would be good. And I think also in terms of that, like, I think you could also ask to speak to authors and look on places like Reddit or Scopes for people that didn't like it. Because I think for me, like, even when I'm looking at something like a restaurant or like any kind of service, whether it's like car detailing or window washing or whatever, I'm always looking for those negative reviews to see if like I think like those have merit, or it's just somebody that's like way more picky than me. Kurt says, can't self-publishing build brand awareness? Not on its own. So what I see a lot of people do is they put up a book on Amazon and they think, great, I'm done. People will find it. And although there is some merit to that, because the algorithm will work for you, and you know, show your book when people look for other things, it's a really passive strategy. And most of the time, the books that I've seen be successful in self-publishing, they had a lot of publicity and marketing behind them to establish them in the market. And that built brand awareness. So it depends on what your goals are as well. Like if you're just trying to like, you know, write a book for your clients, that's totally different than if you're, you know, trying to use a book as a way to establish, you know, get a lot of leads. Linda said, do you have suggestions for obtaining funding for your book? So that's really interesting. So funding for your book. So I don't suggest crowdsourcing your book. A lot of times what I think is, I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? There's no rules. But I think in terms of that, most of the time in the traditional model, they're going to pay you so that you can then, you know, pay for someone like me to help you. But also, you know, if you wanted to self-publish or anything like that, most of the people that I know self-fund. So they don't get like a business loan or anything like that for it. They self-fund, and they have like any other product or service you would launch, they have an individual P&L on what they expect the book to do and how they're going to make their investment back. Okay. And yes, Linda, if you have more questions, you can definitely reach out. If you go to that link that Danica shared in the chat, the go.meganstevenson.com, that will opt you into my email list, and you'll be getting emails from me weekly with more tips and more advice. And so that can be a really nice help. And if you want to opt out, you just want the free guide, you can do that as well. Let's see.
Got running short of time, Megan. Let me just maybe put a screen up. I'll share my screen so we can let everyone know that once again, the website, you're going to get a copy of the slides and the recorded webinar. Our website is score.org/Minnesota. And then we also would like your feedback. So please review the survey. I think Megan did a great job. We went a little bit long, but a lot of interest. And so please do answer that survey and let us know if there are any other topics that you like covered. Megan, did you have a final question or two you wanted to answer?
I don't think so. I mean, I think everybody else asked really good questions. You know, I think that there's a lot of options in this world. And so I'm happy to follow up with anybody that has distinct questions. I also do consults if someone wants to have a longer conversation about their specific conversation as well.
All right. Well, with that, thanks everyone for joining. And that will end our webinar for today.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you all.
Thanks, Megan.